Happy New Year to my Earth signs Capricorn, Taurus and Virgo. Welcome to the Capricorn New Moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello Capricorn Rising, Happy New Year, and welcome to a beautiful, hopeful, strident, committed Capricorn New Moon. It's happening on January the 11th at 10:58 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. And this is your night, and what a beautiful time to start it off. I want you to really feel yourself centered, grounded, determined, and ready to weather the storm. This new moon is somewhat hopeful, somewhat protected and strategic. There are some other aspects in the astrology moving forward that might get a little bit stickier, but January itself is pretty chockers. A new moon in the first house for you Capricorn is to remember what you're doing it for. Remember what that slow ascent up the mountain is for. Remember how much you work and your output and why it's so comprehensive. Remember that you're doing it for everyone. Remember that you're doing it to leave in a path for others to follow in your wake. Remember that everything that you're committed to right now is to benefit a sense of connection and a sense of group healing. Capricorn gets a bad rap for being like a workaholic and sort of being strapped to, the proverbial grindstone. There's a kind of solitary nature about Capricorn sometimes too. For this to be your soul's purpose, your soul's rising intention, we work with Saturn in a way that has those boundaries and that container and that restriction and strictness in an effect that is not about growth at all costs. Capricorn, on a global sense that's separate from you, but as a collective, we look to Capricorn and we can see things like financial structures, financial systems, structures of power. And we can definitely feel the disintegration of those structures over the past decades as Pluto, the planet of complete obliteration, has moved through the sign Capricorn. Maybe you've felt it along the way. Maybe there's been an absolute trigger with your rising placement that you could feel a real pivot or a kind of decimation of your access to your spirituality, or there was something in your life where you're like, is that all there is? I've made a huge mistake. I thought that I was working towards this, but that does not make any sense anymore. I thought that this was who I was, but that definitely makes no sense anymore. A Pluto transit in astrology is profound. I know because I am a Capricorn sun. In fact, it's my birthday 5 days after this moon, FYI. But when Pluto crossed over my sun sign, at a time when I was unaware of that happening, it was in the wake of a complete identity crisis, a complete tidal wave of past trauma that was dredged from beneath the depths of my knowing up into my face for me to look at the ways that I would relate to myself and think about myself and my work, and the way that I thought that my work was the only thing that I was worth. If I stopped doing that and stopped showing up and fronting up, then I was worth nothing. All of these things came to be revealed. They showed themselves to me. And luckily, I was able to find these patterns in order to give my life a bit of context, and rather than feeling that I was just spinning out of control. Pluto's hard. Pluto is also the one that clears the way for something new to grow as well. So, we're thinking about Pluto at this new moon. We're thinking about Pluto hovering at the 29th degree of Capricorn at this new moon. We're thinking that 10 days after this new moon, Pluto will enter Aquarius and begin a new story. We felt Pluto in Aquarius for several months last year, and we're about to feel it again until September. And then from September 2nd of this year, Pluto will have made its way back to that 29th degree of Capricorn and will be there until January of 2025. Now, I'm kind of really casting my eye out, but I'm going to bring it back. But everything that we know about what Pluto can represent in the sign Capricorn has showed us things in relationship to power structures and inequity and subjugation. It's showed us that growth at all costs is untenable. It's shown us that the resources of this planet are finite and that we must respect them and that we must work together in order to generate alternative ways of being and living and consuming. Money don't mean shit. Plants don't give a shit about money. Animals don't give a shit about money. It's an invention. And that's one of Capricorn's major lessons, is to really, really understand that and to remember that it's not about money for them. That slow climb up the mountain, that work might have something more to do with a sketchy sense of self. In tarot, it's the devil that speaks to Capricorn. Now, I love this card, and I love the idea that this card is in my astrology too. As a Capricorn sun, I do a lot of work with this card. And sometimes I do need to hold audience with my devil. Sometimes my devil's trying to tell me something. I don't believe so much that there's external forces that are malefic out to get me. I do believe that the creation of one's own inner demons can be a real battle, and Pluto was the one to really have me remind me of that fact. So if you've got planets, or if your rising sign is around the end degree points of Capricorn, this is a pivotal time for you. 29 degrees specifically, but anywhere close to there is the reverberation of this change. So we're going to be really, really gentle with ourselves, and we're going to remark upon the fact that this is the penultimate new moon that will coincide with a lunation in Capricorn, a new moon in Capricorn. Perhaps in January there will be a feeling of absolute release and a fresh perspective for you, a kind of clarity that might come. I understand that it's not been easy, Capricorn rising, and I think that if we look closer to the astrology, you might begin to feel some support behind you as well. Because at 20 degrees of Capricorn, the sun and the moon will be connected, forming this moment of intention setting. And the card for that in tarot is the Four of Pentacles. Now, sometimes this card can look like a pictorial of all of those things we were speaking of, insofar as wealth at all costs and greed and being disingenuous with our wealth, of turning our back from society in order to hold and harbour the riches for our own. That's one way to look at this card. Another way is to feel the centered kind of position of the body in this card. This individual is really grounded, and it's almost as if they're kind of capable of weathering the storm. So that's another lovely kind of suggestion for you, Capricorn rising, is to maybe work with the Four of Pentacles at this new moon as you're writing your intentions as to what you hope for, perhaps over the coming 6 months up to the full moon in Capricorn, perhaps over the coming 12 months to the next new moon in Capricorn, perhaps for the rest of your time here. What are you ascending for? And how are you going to share that with others? Now, at 20 degrees, there's a lovely conversation that's happening over in Taurus. Uranus is at 19 degrees of Taurus at this new moon, so that's a supportive connection there. And Taurus is where we express ourselves, where we learn about creativity and pleasure, where we think about kids and the joy that being a kid can include, you know, our childhoods. And so Uranus is a rebel, a bit of a teenager maybe, that flips the table, that musses everything up, that fights back. And they'll station direct. They're currently retrograde, but they'll station direct on the 24th of January this year. So you can see that January is pretty like, it's like dominoes. But this moon is in support of Uranus. So perhaps we can look forward and think to the revolution in your creative, expressive self, the revolution in the way that you have access to pleasure as well. I think that we've got to make love, not war, right? Slap me in the face if you think that's a cliche. I'll accept it. But making love is such a powerful way to express the energy, creating, making artwork, investing your heart and your mind into the creation of something beautiful is one of the major factors of why we're here in the first place. So include some of your creative self, include some of your pleasure-seeking self into your new moon manifestation too, Capricorn Rising. There is pressure. There's always pressure. But the sun and the moon at 20 degrees of Capricorn are in square with the dragon down in your fourth house in Aries. So we know that this is major focus. We know that your fourth house, your home, your access to privacy and stability is the major focus over the next year. And so this moon is pressurizing that point. The dragon is sort of urging us back to look at this. So if things at home maybe aren't so stable, if things at home are feeling a sense of urgency, you can keep that in your back pocket, but make sure that you devote the 11th of January, that evening, to yourself. If you at all possibly can, it'll be really important for you, Capricorn Rising. It'll be really, really beneficial. Pluto then on the 21st will enter into Aquarius again. We got a taste of it last year. This year it's the longer haul. And so there's that feeling of power to the people. There's things about sort of the disintegration, the decimation of, it feels like revolt. It feels like revolt. I must remember that the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius in the 1700s, obviously there was, on the global stage, there was the French Revolution that occurred during Pluto's time in Aquarius. There was the American Revolution during that time too. This country that I stand on was invaded and colonized, and a whole culture, a whole human civilization, multiple human civilizations and cultures and languages were decimated. And so that power was, we feel it to this day. I think probably as a very young country, considering the history of the world, we can't let that go. Last year brought its own pain when face to face with that reality, didn't it? As Australians, we all mourn together. But I think if we can work with this astrology for the next 20 years, specifically, we're working towards reparation. We must do. Let's get you some tarot, Capricorn Rising. It is so hot in here. I'm sweating my little head off. 2024 is pivotal. The next time that Pluto will be at 29 degrees of Capricorn will be from September until January next year, right over election time. So globally, we have our eyes on that topic. Hopefully, and if we can really really, really, really lock into the idea that sometimes we can interact with the astrology too. If we've sort of got our handle on it, that's how some folks, they sort of time their watch to it. And that's not to say that it's sort of like fortune telling or predicting the worst or predicting the best or anything like that. I would never set anyone up for a fall. But this year does, you can already feel the sort of flashbacks to 2016. So let's see what happens and let's hope for the best. But rest first. Rest first. I think as a Capricorn rising, I think that there's definitely room to activate. There's definitely room to revolt. There's definitely room to stand up. There's definitely room to participate. There's also room for you to put everything down and to find a safe, dark, calm environment to put yourself back together. I feel that the magic is coming back, Capricorn rising. That's what I really feel quite strongly. And I think that that's part of the lesson of Capricorn in our lifetime. We must remember that we'll never experience Pluto in Capricorn again. And in fact, some generations never experienced Pluto in Capricorn. It's very specific to our time here on this planet. It's very specific to your birth chart. So if we learn more about those significations, if we really do kind of think about the reality, perhaps sometimes I always think of a bushfire and the destruction and the horror that occurrence happens, and I always think about the juicy green undergrowth. I think about controlled burning, probably, maybe not a bushfire. They seem to be man-made and destructive. But whenever there's destruction, there's room for growth. That's probably a good thing for you to remember at this time, Capricorn rising. Whenever there's destruction, there's always room for growth. So that's your reading. If you're still here with me, put a little goat in the comments, won't you? In honor of your soul and my son. I'm going to be with you in 2 weeks to talk about the Leo full moon. You can subscribe to my channel at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. You can throw some money in the tip jar over there, and you can also get your birth chart read. I draw them up like this and read them to you at umaruby.com. So head to my website and have a look if I've not met you before. If I have and you'd like another reading with me, you can choose a femme, a truth, a love, a growth, or a magic reading. And I'd be happy to guide you through the transits and the astrology specific to your birth chart and include lots of tarot too. So here's to it, Capricorn rising. It's going to be a productive one. There's hope on the way. As much as it doesn't feel like that sometimes, we've got to stick together. So I'm sticking with you. I'm sticking by you. I'm not going anywhere. Take it easy, and I'll speak to you very soon. Hello, Taurus Rising. Happy New Year. And welcome to your horoscope for the Capricorn new moon happening on January the 11th at 10:58 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So it's this Sunday. And we're going to be really stoic, staunch, convinced, and we're going to journey into your 9th house, which is where we philosophize and expand our mind and think about our spirituality and learn about it and potentially involve ourselves with the instruction and teaching and sharing of what we know in that world too. The 9th house in the Hellenistic astrology language was the house of the gods. So you can see this is where people would take great journeys, great pilgrimages, venture far and wide to fill themselves up with learning about what it is that we might all be here for. What does life mean? And what can we do with the problems that we face right now? What can we do in times of crisis and in times of great difficulty on a global scale? Capricorn is really diligent and really hard-nosed. They really work and work and work and work. Sometimes they work themselves into the ground. It's Capricorn's job and lesson here in this lifetime to recognize that they are more than just their work, and that they don't have to work in order to find themselves a sense of inclusion, that they're worthy of love. Even if my mum used to say, yeah, I used to draw quite a lot when I was a kid. It was a way that I would translate what it is that I was thinking. I didn't speak very much, but I drew and drew and drew and drew. And I would have these recurring dreams of my hands being chopped off. And it was horrifying because I was like, without my hand, like I'm worth nothing. I can't, And yeah, my mum used to say, even if both of them were lopped off, you're still worthy of love. You're still worthy of being here. And it's always stuck with me. I'll never, ever forget that. Sort of goes to show the connection to Capricorn. I'm a Capricorn sun, so it's my birthday 5 days after this new moon, so FYI. But when in a really helpful, positive, workable kind of light, Capricorn is actually doing it on behalf of others. I like that part of the philosophy around Capricorn, that descent or ascent, I should say, up the mountaintop to seek out the glory of being at the top of the pyramid. It's not for personal gain. It's not for personal, or at least it shouldn't be. In the esoteric sense, Capricorn finds enlightenment up at the top of the mountain, turns into a unicorn. The two horns fuse into one, and they become this beautiful unicorn, and the heavens part, and they see nirvana. They see everything that they'd been working and slaving away for come into fruition, the meaning of life maybe. But in the mythology, rather than disappearing into the ether, the unicorn hears everybody at the base of the mountain. So they re-transform back into the goat, and they make their slow descent all the way back down to the bottom of the mountain to collect everyone and to show them what they've found. That sounds quite quite stoic of me to say, I'm doing it for you, babe. But maybe you can think about some of your Capricorn friends, or even think about some of the ways that you can relate yourself to Capricorn. Remember, we each have every sign in us. Just because there's an emphasis in certain signs because of the planetary placements, that doesn't mean that these philosophies and these stories don't include us too. So by saying that, Taurus rising, your 9th house is very Capricorn. There is that feeling about sometimes solo mission, but it's for the betterment of everyone. It's a revelation and a finding, a hard work, a work ethic in order to bring everyone else along with you, and to help heal what needs to be so urgently healed at this time. There's lovely chat between the sun and the moon at 20 degrees in Capricorn, shooting right down into your 1st house, a beautiful line of support to Uranus at 19 degrees. So we know we're feeling that pretty solidly, the presence of Uranus in Taurus in your 1st house. We have been for some years now. Uranus will actually station direct on the 24th of January, so there might be another wave of the rebel inside. I'll put it that way. Uranus is tetchy. Uranus will flip the table on whatever it touches. So sometimes for good, sometimes not so good. However, if we think about this company that you've been having in your 1st house, your soul's purpose, these things that have been sort of maybe short-circuiting, over the last few years, this feeling of like, oh, I thought this is what I was here to do. This is my life. These are my principles and my interests. Oh, wait, no, that's completely wrong. Poof, that's gone. That's the kind of, if you can work in line with Uranus, which you're probably really good at now because with the dragon has been urging us to look at this part of your life over the last years. Now the sun and the moon at this night of intention setting are speaking quite fondly to Uranus. So maybe if you think about your spirituality, if you think about your learning potential, what else do you want to know? What else do you want to learn about? What other pathways do you want to seek out? It might seem frivolous at a time such as this, but I don't believe that it is. I believe that we're doing our best to maintain our sense of loving humanity. We're doing our best to stand in the face of the obvious advantage that people in power have taken for many, many years. That's how societies tend to be structured. By learning about astrology, I also learn a lot about mythology and therefore history. And so it's so painful to witness just how the privileged few have wealth and prosperity while the others are the ones that are paying for it. And even as a white English-speaking person, sometimes my position between the two vacillates. I'm working class. I come from a very poor family. That's the reality. Also, I am white-skinned and can speak English and have had access to tertiary education. And that's a privilege that is not afforded so many people around the world. And by sort of engaging in fast fashion and all of those sorts of things, that does put a huge swathe of the human populace in subordination. All of these things, we can't unlearn them. But what I'm saying about this being frivolous as far as focusing in on your philosophies on the world and your spirituality, this is a privilege that you must afford yourself, that you must meet the obligation of this while taking active steps with the rest of the world in this moment of uprising. Pluto, the planet that disintegrates everything that it touches, that destroys, that dregs up things that are hidden from below the surface and reveals them, is playing out in Capricorn right now at the 29th degree of the sign and is about to move into Aquarius. Now, Pluto takes 248 years to move around the zodiac, so we will never know Pluto in Capricorn ever again. But think about the idea of us being alive at this time and really bearing witness to the effect of Pluto in Capricorn. In global astrology, Capricorn can represent people in power, financial systems, power structures. And Pluto disintegrates. And so even if you just wanted to look back at the last 5 years, however, Pluto's been in effect since 2008 at the financial crisis. And then there was the bailouts. There was the banks were bailed out, and everyone was like, "Wait, what? Why can't you bail us out of this crisis?" Maybe there's something about you can recognize that inflation is occurring and it's on the top of everyone's mind. There's so many folks that are sort of like, I'm earning the same amount of money, I'm working just as hard, if not harder, but I'm not getting paid anymore. But why is my money now worth less? Those things are coming thick and fast. We see it in the injustices against women. We see it in the injustices against black and brown folks. We see it in the injustices against LGBTQ folks. All of this uprising, these old systems of oppression that are looking down and sort of keeping everyone in their place so they can prosper. This is what Pluto is really bringing home. And at 29 degrees, 10 days after this new moon in Capricorn, it will flop over into Aquarius. It will be there until September of this year and move back into Capricorn. So from September until January of 2025, that is the last dance of Pluto in Capricorn. I'm not saying all of this to sort of like be a fearmonger or anything like that, but I think that you can feel the uprising, and there's probably causes and realities that are really clear to you that you are standing up for. You've found language for oppressive structures. I think about just in the tabloids, just like Harvey Weinstein and the gross reality of the Hollywood machine, that system of power just really being revealed as the monster that it is. The principles and the aspirations of generations moving forward won't be aligned with that machine any longer. In fact, folks are feeling more confident to stand up to injustice or stand up to situations when they feel that their boundaries have been crossed. This is all really powerful, powerful stuff, and stuff that Pluto in Capricorn is doing. Pluto in Aquarius is potentially power to the people. However, because of that 248 cycle, the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius was when this country that we stand on here in Australia was colonized by the white man. And so you think about destruction, decimation of a culture. I think by looking and finding that pattern, the next 20 years as an Australian standing on this land, the privilege that I have to call this place my home, we are making reparations. Things cannot go on the way that they have any longer, and the injustice of the no vote that occurred at the Libra eclipse is the beginning point for focus. So we register our privilege. We're grateful for our privilege. We also must reconcile our privilege and make changes in our lives and changes where we can as a societal structure to help and to heal and to protect those that are vulnerable around us, and to reinstill dignity in folks. Every single one of us deserves to keep our chin up, to hold our head high, be proud of our work, be proud of our life, be proud of our home. There's big stuff here. I think that because Capricorn is in your 9th house of philosophy and spirituality, I don't wish for you, Taurus Rising, to put those topics aside because you feel that there's bigger fish to fry. In fact, this is actually, you probably can speak to this. This revolution in the 1st house, internally, in your internal world, is echoing out there. Can you feel it? From inside to outside. We learn as much as we can every day. We get the facts too. And we don't divide and separate. We do not us and them it, because that's just what has always kept us divided and separated. And when we're divided and separated, then that's where the control is easier to manage. But wealth at all costs is over. Growth at all costs is over. Mining natural resources and selling them for a profit, resources that belong to no one except for the earth, must be over. We'll see what happens. The next 20 years are going to be really wild. Whoa, that was pretty... yeah. I hope you're still with me, Taurus Rising. Let's get some tarot. I don't want to come off as like, I don't wear tinfoil on my head or anything like that. I just look at the stars. I read tarot and learn about astrology because it gives me a sense of hope. If I can find the pattern here, and if I can learn about this and learn about what occurred before, it's a great history lesson too, because you've got to learn about the past in order to learn from it, right? When you see a pattern emerging from the past that seems to be emerging again, and the rise of the fascist right wing, I mean, that's something that needs to be sort of quelled and stopped. And I feel that people are savvy to that. I feel that people are rising towards that too, against that, I should say. It might be shaky, but we've got each other. Yeah. Wow. Seven of Cups, Five of Wands, Six of Pentacles. Yeah, we've got to defend ourselves against the gross decadence of the culture. We've got to defend ourselves and our planet and our plants, our trees, our animals from the gross decadence of the culture, from greed, from waste, from all of those things. And we've got to find ourselves in a place where if I need, I will receive. If you need, I will give. A place of absolute reciprocity with nature, with humankind. That sounds like a wildly deluded thing to say, and I don't care, because I think that sometimes I'm pretty wildly deluded. But this is what have focused my life towards, is by finding these patterns and also by really, really, really waking up to what has gone before. I don't wish to sort of laden you with guilt too. I'm sure that you've got a pretty small footprint as well. It's not something that I don't wish to wake up to your greed and your wastefulness. But it's definitely topics that we're all going to be contending with. It's definitely topics that we'll continue to contend with as the children grow into adults. There'll be no getting around the generations coming up under us, no getting around it. Already now, high school kids are just on it. So proud of them. I really like their pride in their intelligence. That's really beautiful. Pluto in Aquarius could be power to the people. If we remember what it was before, we can move together forward and around and back again. That's it, Taurus Rising. I love you very much. If you're still here with me, put a goat in the comments. Chuck us a goat, won't you? Throw us a goat in the comments. You can subscribe to my horoscopes at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. You can throw some money in the tip jar there. You can also head to my website, umaruby.com, and I'll draw you up your birth chart and read it to you. If I've read for you before and you'd like something else, you can book a femme or a love or a truth or a growth or a magic reading. So check them out. There's some little images and reading prompts, some song lyrics there that might pique your interest, of topics that we can talk about in our reading. We'll be focusing on the transits in your astrology and also heavily in the tarot too. Much love to you, Taurus Rising. I'll speak to you in 2 weeks for the Leo full moon. Till then, bye. Hello Virgo Rising, Happy New Year, and welcome to your horoscope for the Capricorn new moon happening on January the 11th at 10:58 p.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So we're going to harness our Capricorn-ness. We're going to think about the cardinal earth sign. You're the mutable, so you're like clay, remember? You're like the movability and the sort of impressionability, maybe, but definitely malleability of clay. But Capricorn is strident. Capricorn is a mountain. They climb to the precipice. They journey up and up and up, sometimes for want of success, sometimes for want of a kingdom to lord over, for power. However, in the esoteric philosophy of astrology, which is something that I'm really interested in, and in fact in probably a lot of the Capricorns that you know, if you really think about it, they're striving to reach the top in order to clear the path, to go back down again, and to fetch everyone else and show them what they've found, to show them the way. We've got to be gentle with our Capricorn friends. I am one. I'm a Capricorn sun. In fact, it's my birthday 5 days after this new moon. But when I think about Capricorn and the moon, it's a stickier relationship, and maybe that's where some of that sort of stubbornness or caustic kind of vibes can come in with Capricorn, because the moon is so far out of step and out of reach from where it's most helpful, which is in Cancer, across the way from Capricorn, where it's much more helpful, beneficial in the sign that it can move around and talk directly about emotions and feelings. In Capricorn, it does feel a little bit austere. That's not to say that we're not going to work with it. We're not going to be stoic and convinced, about this moon, I think that it's probably a really good thing to do. Maybe that's Mars and their effect in Capricorn as well. So at 5 degrees of Capricorn, Mars will be at this new moon, and they're forming an exact trine with Jupiter in Taurus. So let's pick apart some of this astrology and talk about it in regard to your life. So Capricorn on your birth chart is your 5th house, Virgo Rising, which is where we express ourselves. It's where we engage in acts of pleasure. It's where we have sex. It's where we create and get out our brushes and make art and beauty, which are the tenements of life. They're the only things that are going to save us. That's the only point in living, is love, pleasure, art and beauty, as far as I can see it. And that's not beauty in a sort of point of like, not to look at it with a sense of idealistic sort of perfection at all, but it's the creation process. It's the point of having consciousness or intelligence or yeah, as far as I can see it. We don't know for sure how much consciousness is out there in plant life, although I've been spending a lot of time with my plants, and I tell you what, they speak to me sometimes. Maybe not so much about the animal kingdom, however that's being refuted here, there and everywhere. That's not to say that human consciousness is not special, and our ability with our thumbs to create what we see and to express ourselves through our voice, the visual world, through touch, is so powerful, and hopefully it's something that you can find yourself back into friendship with moving forward, Virgo Rising. This is the moon for it. If you wanted to set an intention creatively, artistically, passionately, sexually, then this would be the evening to do it. And you've got a great deal of support with Mars there too, because Mars is like, yeah, where to? Let's do it. I'll burn that pathway for you. What I'm looking at in this relationship between Capricorn and Taurus, though, is something that feels kind of like spiritual. It feels philosophical to me, because Jupiter can represent our closest access to the heavens. You know, Jupiter is like the king of the pantheon. Jupiter is the one that expands and brings great spiritual growth wherever it goes. And Taurus is your 9th house of philosophy, spirituality, of expanding your mind and traveling. Maybe that doesn't have to be physically, but it could be a grand adventure to find something else. If you've been feeling really stuck, Virgo Rising, if you've been feeling that your face is pressed against the grindstone and that there's no pleasure in life and that you've just been working and working and working, then this new moon in 2024 is the one to change it up. And you can do that as simply as setting your intention by wondering about what would life be if there was just more room for beauty and art and my creativity, or if there was more room that I could devote to my philosophical practices too. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of room for that at present. It does feel really pressurized and really tensed, and there is this growing feeling in the air of a fight for survival. A lot of folks are just trying to get by, and to have a creative practice or a philosophical one is a luxury. I'm very cheap to run. And these are my life choices, and this is how I regulate. If I don't have access to my creativity, then I suffer quite sincerely. And so that's something that I know about myself, and that I'm not going to get down on myself about continuing to focus on. In fact, I have found it to be a great salve through unknowable times of terror and fear and worrying about maybe the bottom line, or worrying about the safety of those around me that I love very much. My creativity and my philosophy, my spirituality has been immeasurably valuable to me. So maybe you can hold on to this, Virgo Rising. If what I'm saying to you is like, oh, if only, oh, it's not the time, then I'd like you to take this moment, just this new moon, to directly set that intention. You don't have to act on it straight away. You don't have to feel that the year's already getting away from you. The Chinese celebrate the Lunar New Year. That's on the 10th of February this year. And we'll all be celebrating the Zodiacal New Year in April at the Aries new moon. However, that will be an eclipse. But that's another story for another time. Let's just really focus in on the importance and the beauty of your creativity, of your artistry, and of your access to pleasure. I feel that pleasure can sometimes be revolutionary. It has been in the past, coming from standing on the shoulders of giants as I do, as far as being queer and as far as looking back at the suffering of my people and of the bravery of my people to be themselves and to stand up for their rights and to stand up for the truth and the power and the beauty of human connection. And the pleasure being an act of revolution, of stepping away from subjugation and violence and police brutality and standing up and saying, you have no right to do that to me because I engage in pleasure. Powerful stuff. So at times when it feels like, maybe there's latent guilt around creating or enjoying yourself because of the huge pressures that the world is facing right now, have a little think about the history of that stuff though, and have a little think about how systems of control were torn down because folks were brave enough to fuck who they want to fuck, love who they want to love, create what they want to create, express themselves how they wish to express themselves. There's a whole bunch of different ways that suppression has been used as an act of control, and we've got to break through that. We've got to try anyway. I think that that's what I want to say to you about the astrology, Virgo Rising. The tarot does speak to the Four of Pentacles, so at 20 degrees of Capricorn, we speak to this card. And there's many different ways to look at it. Sometimes it can come off as sort of like this feeling of being a penny pincher and sort of like not being sort of holding on to what you have. In other ways to look at this card, it can be like, right, I'm sort of setting my anchor. I'm solid. I'm in a really healthy, solid formation with my body, so I can weather this storm. That's another way to look at this card. And maybe with your fifth house-ness, your creative zone, maybe that's what you can say to yourself too. You can be like, the storm is coming. In fact, Pluto entering into Aquarius 10 days after this new moon will speak to that too. Now, I don't wish to say that things are going to go terribly wrong. In fact, I don't wish to give any of this advice or interpretation with a feeling of foreboding at all. I don't find it helpful. What I'm fascinated, and a lot of folks that are studying the skies are fascinated about what might happen when Pluto does sit in Aquarius for good. We got a taste of it last year. The beginning of last year. We're getting a taste of it, a big healthy whack of it this year. Pluto will be in Aquarius from the 21st of January. They will re-enter Capricorn on the 1st of September, and they will stay there at that final pivotal degree of Capricorn until January of 2025. On a global sort of view, vantage point, we do know that that's a very pertinent time for elections and things like that. It's election year coming up. And for Pluto to be at that final vital degree of Capricorn, a sign that can represent power structures, that can represent financial systems, that can represent people that have and people that do have that have not. To have this revelation, this revealing continuing to go on, I feel that creativity and art making and expressing yourself couldn't be more valuable right now. if it's a question about sort of clamping down and not sharing and holding on to what you've got, or not allowing yourself that outlet because there's bigger fish to fry globally and things might turn up that we've got to face together, that's the exact time to express yourself. So just think about it in that way. I don't wish to sort of be oogity boogity about the Pluto stuff, but I spoke about it a lot last year and the year before, and it's time now, you know. The last time that Pluto was in Aquarius was in the 1700s. I think 1777 was when it first entered. And so if Aquarius represents the people and Pluto represents power, it might be something like power to the people. Whatever else is dredged up, whatever secrets are revealed, whatever we are shown about the monstrosity of wealth, gross wealth to that magnitude, the people feel like they can't take it anymore now. So let's hold hands together and let's make sure that we as a community have enough and that are taken care of. And let's face this together, and let's you, Virgo Rising, express yourself. Make love, not war, man. Make love, not war, man. That's the truth. That's something that you're going to hang on to for the rest of this year, Virgo Rising, and possibly, hopefully, for the rest of your life. We're going to make love, not war. Sounds hack. Sounds like I'm a hippie waster, no hoper, unrealistic, whatever. Call me what you like. That's the only way that we're going to move through this. Systems have to change. The world, the way the world is structured, the way that we deplete from our natural resources, the way that we indulge in slavery daily by fast fashion and everything else, it's not working. The planet's telling us it's not working. The raging unhappiness across the planet is telling us that it's not working. This is your individual speck of stardust, though, Virgo Rising. You're right there in the center. You know when to retreat, and you know how to heal. You know how to go inward, in fact, to bring it outward and to share it. In the Hermit's lantern is the star, and the star is Aquarius. Power to the people. You know what you are doing in little increments in your daily life. You know that your presence is bringing power. Your support is invaluable. The way that you care for those around you and make sure that they have what they need as far as comfort and guidance, support, love. You can't compare that. All of this beautiful Venusian, fertile energy around you. You make love, you create. I read an article a couple of days ago about this young couple that decided not to have children because of the state of the world. And it tore my heart out, and I could hear the realist voices on one side of the scale standing up and saying, yes, well, it's overpopulation, and being really unemotional about it. The other side of me was like, if you want a kid, have a kid. This generation is thinking about these things practically. I wonder if that's ever happened before to such an extent. So you can feel that again, there's like a lot of pain, a lot of coldness with that truth. I'd like to think, Virgo Rising, that this 5th house activation for you is going to feel like sugar. It's going to feel like warm honey. It's going to move some things that have been perhaps a little bit cold. The 5th house can speak to children. It can speak to the little ones in our lives as well. And so maybe there's something in there about your relationship with the kids you have, or the potential of having or not having them. That could be something that you could use as impetus for this new moon in Capricorn. If you want to set that intention and go through with it, I think you should. And you will raise them to take what they need, not what they want. You will raise them to respect the planet that they stand on, to respect every single human being on this planet as an equal. We need less greedy, entitled, gross wealth. We don't need less love and less nurturing. That's your reading, Virgo Rising. If you're still here with me, put a goat in the comments, please. That would be in perfect rhythm with Capricorn. You can subscribe to my horoscopes over at buymeacoffee.com/UmaRuby, and for 10 Australian dollars a month you can be in support of me. You can also throw some money in the tip jar. I can draw your birth chart and read it to you at umaruby.com. That's my website. And if you've not been there before, check it out, have a look. There's a little section of writing over on Glory Box that you can have a look at. If I have read for you and you'd like another reading with me this year, head to the bookings page and you can choose a femme, you can choose a love, a truth, a growth, or a magic reading. We'll use the transits in the astrology, and we'll use a lot of the tarot to get stuck into it. So have a think about it, and sending you lots and lots and lots of love, and I'll speak to you in 2 weeks for the Leo full moon. Take care, Virgo Rising. Bye.